This is Jim Williams with the Hurricane City Tropical Update for September 9th, 5:30 p.m. Here's the active tropical systems and invest map from the front page of Hurricane City. And we have two systems we're keeping an eye on. Tropical Depression Igor was a tropical storm this morning, was downgraded due to wind shear out in the East Atlantic. And there's the cone of error. It hasn't really changed all that much from yesterday, pretty much west with a little bend to the right late in the forecast period. And that's mainly due to the GFDL model, which wants to hook it on out early. And we also have Invest 92L in the Windward Islands that is struggling a little bit. The conditions are not all that favorable in the Eastern Caribbean right now, but the system is drifting slowly off to the north. So let's get to the details on both of these systems. First of all, let's start with Igor. And there it is near the the Cape Verde Islands, rather. And here's the model map from Hurricane City. The models are fairly consistent, a little bit tight cluster of generally westerly track with a little bend to the right when it gets around 50 degrees west. But notice the GFDL model really hooks it off to the northwest, because GFDL makes this a very intense system, and it would feel more of the effects of the weakness of the high pressure ridge to the north and take more of a poleward motion. So that's why the GFDL model is showing that. The other models keep it a little bit weaker and more generally off to the west. Now, generally when a system remains weaker, it's going to take a more southerly route. System stronger, it's going to take a more northerly route. So the models are kind of, there's a lot of discrepancy between the models and how intense this is going to get. The aviation ensemble models keep this very weak out here. So this is something we're going to have to keep an eye on. In fact, the European model is indicating this is going to still come near 20 and 60 west, north of the Greater Antilles, and head just northeast of the Bahamas before it would make a potential turn off the southeastern United States between Bermuda and the U.S. That's the long-range thinking from the European model. So again, we got to keep a close eye on this. It depends on how strong it gets and how many. We have two troughs to potentially take this out to sea that I mentioned in yesterday's update. All right, here are the models on Invest 92L. And again, when you have an invest, the models are scattered because we don't know where the center of circulation is, if there's any at all. And that's why the models are really scattered here. If it develops in the Leeward Islands, no matter where it develops, most of the models take it west-northwest. So it all depends on where the genesis of the center of circulation is, and then it would go west-northwest from there. So the thinking is, with most of the models, generally the Greater Antilles, Hispaniola, Cuba, Jamaica area might have to watch this. But the European model, southern outlier here, takes this into the southern Gulf of Mexico through the Yucatan. So that's another potential track. We'll have to keep an eye on that, and it just remains to be seen where the center is going to form on this. So we really can't say for sure any of these models have a good beat on this at this time. All right, here is Igor again. I know I keep going back and forth. I have a lot of different images to show you, but here Igor, all the convection is out to the west of the center of circulation, which is back here near the Cape Verde Islands. We also have another big blow up here in Africa that's ready to move off, and the European model and several others indicate that this is going to become Julia and follow behind Igor, heading generally just north of the Leeward Islands in about a week or so down the road, 10 days, and then we'll have to see what happens with implications to the United States. Another area of low pressure out here that we'll have to keep an eye on as well. Here's a visible shot of Igor, and again, you can clearly see the center right here to the east of the ball of convection right near the Cape Verde Islands. That's why it's been downgraded to a tropical depression, but as this moves away from the islands, it'll find a more favorable environment, and this should go ahead and get a little bit stronger. Now here is the upper level winds from the University of Wisconsin from the East Atlantic, and let me zoom in on this a little bit because this is kind of hard to see with all the yellow lines on here. But here's the coast of Africa right here. Here are the Cape Verde Islands, and here is Igor. Now what's happening is we have a high pressure ridge directly over the top of this system, but the southern side of the high pressure ridge has 20 to 30 knots of wind shear blowing the cloud tops off to the west of the center of circulation. So until this gets a little further away from this little mini high pressure ridge here, it will find itself in a sheared environment, and we also have wind shear to the north of the system as well. So it needs to get a little further to the west so it can find itself a little more favorable environment. Yesterday's update I mentioned is very favorable because it has a lot of moisture in the air, but there is some shear out in the East Atlantic that it has to deal with until it can have a chance to develop. All right, let's take a look at some images. First of all, this is the LSU water vapor loop that Doorman likes to show a lot on the message board. And this is important. You know, every once in a while this map comes in handy. And this is showing the dry air to the north of Invest 92L. Look at this swath of dry air. It's kind of sitting just north of the axis of Invest 92L. Plus we have about 20 knots of shear or so from east to west, just south of the Windward Islands. That's kind of disrupting the flow a little bit too. So this is not the most ideal of circumstances for development. Pressures are low out here though, and we'll have to keep an eye on this, but again, it remains on where the center gets developed as to where this is going to go. So everybody in the Greater Antilles, Jamaica, and all here needs to pay very close attention to this, even though it's not really that well organized right now. And it might take a while because of this dry air out here, so we'll have to keep an eye on that. Here are the models from TropicalAtlantic.com on the intensity forecast for Invest 92L. And we're looking at generally 50 to 60 mile an hour winds going at about 5 days or so. And it's pretty levels off at that point. If you look at the models, you can pretty much tell that there's a tight clustering right around the 40 to 50 knot range. Whoops, I'm zoomed in there a little bit too much. There we go. These models are all tightly clustered pretty much as a strong tropical storm because of the fact that there's an indication this is going to be tangling a lot with the Greater Antilles of Hispaniola, Cuba, Jamaica, and areas like that. So it's not going to be in the most ideal situation for development dealing with land masses. So that's the thinking. In fact, even the late cycle models indicate that this is going to get no more than maybe 35, 40 mile an hour tropical storm, and they're pretty stable here for about 48 hours on up as it's tangling with land out here. So that's the thinking. This is not going to strengthen that much because of its entanglement with the Greater Antilles. And finally, let's take a look at the water vapor loop of the Atlantic Basin. And we have Invest 92L on the map, and you can see the beginnings of Igor on the right-hand side of the screen coming into the picture here. Here is Invest 92L, and again, it's kind of stretched out here. There's not really any definable area of low pressure. Again, dry air to the north, wind shear to the south. Not the most ideal of situations. We'll have to watch it closely, but this is not ramping up anytime soon in anything significant. And again, the models are scattered throughout the Greater Antilles. So that's about it. Again, we have a long time to watch Igor, and again, the model's thinking that this is going to move west-northwest for a very long time. Some want to take it out early, but some others, like the Euro, want to take it very close to the United States. So we have a long time to watch Igor and potentially Julia down the road behind that. That's it for now. We'll be back with another update in a day or two, depending on what happens in the tropics over the next day or two. That's it for now. Thank you again for visiting Hurricane City.